Our brains are wired to survive, and everything that our brains do is rooted in that, is rooted in trying to survive. You can really understand any process of your brain or any experiences that you're having by looking at things through this lens. We need attachment and connection in order to survive, especially in the wild. And contact between a mother and a baby releases endorphins, which is basically like natural painkillers. And this is because if a baby and a mother were separated in the wild, the baby would need to cry in order for the mother to find it and in order for the baby to survive, because the baby cannot survive on its own. They did a study where they took rats' endorphin receptors away and they wouldn't cry when they were separated from their mothers. So essentially we have this addiction to attachment to our caregivers in order to help us survive. And if you learn that something is going to threaten that attachment, then it's going to threaten your life. And so you will get rid of whatever is threatening that. And this is how shame is born. So if you're criticized, if you're abused, if you're humiliated by someone, especially a parent or a caregiver, that threatens your attachment. And you're gonna learn that whatever that thing you did, like, you need to stop doing it. Our brains at that point are not fully developed to understand that adults make mistakes too, and that their reaction to us is not always our fault. But at that point in time, you need that person in order to survive. So it's easier for you to place the blame on yourself. We have to find ways to trust them again and to value their opinion and their beliefs. So when we have this experience of something threatening our attachment, that threatens our survival, and then our brain learns, this part of me is not okay, or this thing that I did is not okay. And sometimes this is expressing emotion. So maybe you get really angry, maybe you cry a lot, and then you're criticized or you're humiliated or whatever it is, and you start to learn to repress your emotions, because in order to maintain attachment and connection, which you need to survive, you learn that it's better to repress your emotions. Another cause of shame could be the fear of being ostracized or rejected. So maybe you haven't had that experience yet, but something makes you feel that it will happen if people found out a certain thing about you or if you act a certain way. And so shame also comes from this fear of that. And again, when we were hunter-gatherers, we needed to be accepted by our tribe in order to survive. Being rejected and ostracized meant that you would die. And so this is why so many of us still have this fear of rejection, because we perceive it as a threat to our survival, and our brains are wired to keep us alive. So to survive and to maintain connection and attachment, which we essentially have an addiction to also because we release endorphins, we repress parts of ourselves and we repress our authenticity, because our authenticity has become a threat to our survival. And when we lived in the wild, we actually needed our authenticity, because that's your intuition, that's your gut feeling. And if you didn't have that, and if you just went off of logic, you would not survive out in the wild. And I also believe that we need our authenticity in this life to connect to our higher selves, to connect to God, to attract the right experiences into our life, and to live out our purpose. But so many of us have learned to repress it, and so many of us don't even know how to get back in touch with it. Traumatic events disconnect you from your body, your emotions, the present moment, and it also causes negative feelings, a negative view of the world, negative self-talk. And it doesn't really matter what the trauma was, it matters how it's affecting your life now. And this is often how it's affecting your life, is by making it difficult for you to be present, making it difficult for you to think positively, and making you feel disconnected from your body and your own emotions and your gut feelings. And to heal trauma, you just need to reconnect with yourself and reconnect with your body and reconnect with your emotions. So you have to teach yourself that it's safe to be yourself again, because above all, your body needs to feel safe and needs to feel that it's going to survive. And you can do this by facing and challenging the fears and beliefs that you have that are holding you back. So if you have a fear of rejection, if you have a fear of being seen, if you have a fear of abandonment, these are all things that are preventing you from being your authentic self, because you're acting out of fear. You're not acting out of authenticity. But if you can stop acting out of fear and teach your body that you're not going to die if you get rejected, you're not going to die if you put yourself out there and get criticized, the more that you're going to learn that, the safer your body is going to feel, and it's going to be able to reconnect with your emotions and with your authentic self. If you want to work through your fears and heal anxiety, I'm gonna put in the description free root chakra healing worksheets to help you feel connected to the earth again, feel connected to your body again, and work through your fears and feel safe in your body. Another thing that's important is to let yourself feel your emotions and express them. And I want you to understand that your emotions are valid simply because they exist, and your emotions wouldn't exist if there wasn't a reason for them to. And emotions are something that happens naturally. We don't have control over them. So the fact that you're feeling something means that it's totally valid for you to feel that way, and it makes sense for you to feel that way. And it doesn't matter if you're invalidating yourself or if people invalidate you or have throughout your life, or they tell you that you're too sensitive and that you shouldn't feel this way. Well, you wouldn't feel this way if you shouldn't feel this way, because emotions are something that just happens naturally. And so you should never be judging yourself for the emotions you're having, because anyone in your situation would be feeling that way. I know it's easy to feel like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way, I shouldn't be expressing this, but obviously you should, because emotions are something that happens naturally that we don't have control over. So if it's happening for a reason. I know that it can take time to even be able to feel your emotions and be connected to them, but every time that you do have them, make sure that you're acknowledging them and you're letting yourself actually feel them. And understand that emotions are just feelings, they're not facts. So don't read into them too much, don't assign them too much meaning or value. But it's so easy and common to just want to distract yourself from emotions and just go on social media, watch TV, drink, do whatever, and just distract yourself from what you're feeling. But the way that we need to deal with emotions in order to get them out of our body is to be present with them. And your body actually perceives repressing emotions as a form of stress. And then this is how we end up with triggers. It's because your body starts to associate certain events with stress. And so then it starts trying to avoid those events, or it starts having extreme reactions to certain events. But again, you can retrain your mind, you can retrain your body to behave differently. So what you want to do is, when you're feeling an emotion, actually sit with it, be present with it, observe it, evaluate it, examine it. And I have a processing emotions workbook on Amazon, or you could get the ebook on my website for $5. And it has a bunch of prompts to help you do this and to help you sit with your emotions each time you have them, and then to find out where they came from and what cognitive distortions you're having. And there's a list of cognitive distortions. There's a list of ways to transmute emotions. There's a list of ways to release emotions. And then I go more in depth about how to transmute each negative emotion. But yeah, the best way to deal with emotions is to actually be present with them. Let yourself feel them. Let yourself ride it out instead of trying to distract yourself or trying to repress it. And then I think it's good to try to recognize where this is coming from and if the story that you're telling yourself is true, and then to find some way to release it, whether that's through physical movement, creating art, tears, or transmuting it into a more positive emotion. And so the workbook will help you with all of that if you want. And the reason that feeling emotions is so healing is because you're teaching your body that you're able to get back to your baseline. You're able to get back into a state of relaxation and feeling okay. And every time that you're able to fully feel an emotion and be present with it and ride out that emotional low and then return to feeling okay, it's training your body that it's safe and it's okay to feel things and it's okay to have negative experiences. Whereas if you're constantly trying to distract yourself and you're constantly repressing your emotions, then your body is getting more and more scared of everything, and it's just going to be contributing to mental illness and things like that, because your body is going to perceive that as a form of stress and it's not going to feel like it's able to handle certain things. But you want to teach yourself that you can handle things, you can handle negative emotions, and you can handle negative experiences. And you can do this by being present with them and then letting them go in a healthy way and returning back to feeling okay again without using substances or without using unhealthy coping mechanisms. And also, if you have past emotions come up or past trauma come up that you feel like you've never actually fully processed or sat with, it can be good to just fully sit with it, fully remember what happened and be present with it, and then find a healthy way to release it. And it's not good to be constantly reliving trauma and to constantly be back in that dark place. But if you're always pushing it away and you've never actually processed it, this can be why it keeps coming up and why it keeps being an issue. But if you can allow yourself to just feel it and process it once, in my experience, I've been able to just completely heal those parts of myself and make peace with them. Whereas for years, it was like every time I'd have that thought coming up, I would like push it away or just try to be like, everything's fine now. I don't want to feel this. I'm just going to ignore it. But when I actually let myself like be like, okay, I'm going to sit with this emotion as uncomfortable as it is and acknowledge what happened instead of being in denial, that was really healing to me. And then I was able to get myself back into a regulated state after. Some things that you can transmute shame into are compassion, empathy, courage, and pride. The opposite of shame is pride. And when we feel shame, our body language becomes protective. So we like put our shoulders in, maybe we look down, and we make ourselves small because we're kind of trying to like hide from a threat almost. And even just changing your posture, changing your body language to that of pride can be helpful. Also, see if you can reframe the situation in a way where you can be proud of yourself, where you can go, you know what, I overcame this and I'm proud of that, or I'm able to help other people through this and I'm proud of that, or I'm my authentic self and I'm not for everyone and some people might see it as flawed, but I'm proud of that. So see if you can reframe shame in that way. Shame is also something that helps us to feel empathetic. I'm pretty sure everyone experiences some level of shame in their lives. So you can relate to so many people. You can help other people through healing your own shame, through acknowledging your own shame, even just through relating, through sharing your story. You don't have to necessarily feel that you're healed from it, but you can turn shame into empathy and you can turn shame into helping others. You can also turn shame into courage by facing your fears, by overcoming whatever it is that shame is telling you to do that you shouldn't be doing, like repressing yourself or letting fears control you. You can take shame and you can go, no, instead I'm actually going to face my fears. I'm actually going to be myself. I'm actually going to cry openly and not care what anyone thinks of me. And so in that way you can turn shame into courage. You can also turn shame into compassion for yourself and compassion for others, and make peace with those parts of you that felt shame and have love and understanding and acceptance of them. And recognize that you are inherently worthy simply because you are alive and you are good enough exactly as you are. There's no reason to be ashamed, and obviously it's good to learn and to grow and learn from whatever mistakes we have, but you don't want to be living in the past. You want to make peace with your past and forgive yourself, because that's all you can really do, and you can learn and grow from it. But there's no point in still being upset with yourself and still looking down on yourself for that. I think most of the time that we feel shame anyway, it's actually not something we did wrong and it's not something that bad that we did. But for whatever reason, we feel shameful about it. Probably because someone told us to, someone made us feel that we should. But even if you actually did something that you deem as bad, it's really important to find that forgiveness for yourself and just focus on who you are now and who you can be in the future. We're all just organisms trying to survive and working with what we know, what we have, and doing our best. And whatever decisions you made in the past, whatever you did in the past, you were just doing the best with what you had based on all of your experiences and what you knew. And anyone in your situation would have done the same thing. But I think it's important to find that forgiveness for yourself and then to recognize if that shame should have ever even belonged to you. And if it was just someone projecting their own insecurities onto you or their own beliefs. I think a lot of times we're just pressured to conform to society, to fit into society, and not to express ourselves and not to show emotion. But that's not how things should be, and you shouldn't be internalizing that. Now we're going to take a couple minutes and do an exercise to release shame. I want you to think of a time that you felt shame, something that you feel was pivotal in your life. Maybe try to think of a time that you repress, that you think, oh, that didn't affect me that much, that's not a big deal. That might really be the root of your shame, and that might be carrying a deeper meaning than you realize, especially if you're repressing it. But if you can, try to remember that, or remember the first time that you experienced shame, and you can do this exercise as many times as you need to. Now, I want you to imagine that child version of you that experienced shame, and imagine that this current version of you now is meeting with your child self. And what would you tell this child self about this experience? Maybe you would want to tell them that someone else was just projecting their ideas of how to behave. And the things that people make you feel bad about or judge you for actually has nothing to do with you. And it's not a reflection of you or your worth. Maybe you would want to tell them that it's safe for them to be themselves. It's safe for them to express emotions. And it's valid for them to feel these emotions, and they're perfectly fine the way they are. They're perfectly worthy and great the way they are. And the way that people treat them or the way that people expect them to act is not a reflection of their worth. It's a reflection of those people's own insecurities and beliefs, and that they are perfectly worthy the way they are. Maybe you would want to tell them that this shame is not theirs. It was never theirs. It's something that someone else is putting on them. Maybe you would tell them that they should forgive themselves. They should have compassion for themselves, and they should be comfortable being themselves, and that they're not going to get abandoned. They're not going to get criticized, and that they're going to survive whatever it is that they go through, and there's nothing to fear. Whatever it is that you want to tell this child self, take a few minutes to visualize this, visualize meeting with your child self, and visualize what you would tell them. So I'm gonna end this video here, and I'll let you take some time to do that. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to read your comments, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video.